Fame never forgets its chosen ones, even when they would rather be forgotten. In 1988, inside a small apartment in Beverly Hills, an 81-year-old Bette Davis sat near the window, her voice tired but clear. For the first time, she spoke openly about the woman who had haunted every chapter of her life, Joan Crawford. What began as rivalry had turned into something darker, a wound that refused to heal. "I hated her so much," Bette murmured, "that I forgot who I was." Those words, her final confession before her death the following year, stunned Hollywood. After decades of silence, Davis had unwrapped the secret that had shaped both women's lives, a truth about envy, survival, and the price of power in a world that devoured its brightest stars. To understand the bitterness behind that line, we must go back to where it began, 1933. The year Bette Davis learned that in Hollywood, enemies don't destroy you. Colleagues do. At just 25, Bette had landed her first major role at Warner Brothers in Ex-Lady, a film she believed would launch her into stardom. On the eve of its premiere, she wrote to her mother with trembling excitement, "Tomorrow my name will be on every front page." But the next morning, the newspapers told a different story. Instead of her movie, the headlines screamed, "Joan Crawford divorces. Douglas Fairbanks, Jr." 4 columns of heartbreak and glamour, and not a single mention of Bette's film. She would later learn that Crawford herself had tipped off reporters with perfect timing. Whether the rumor was true or not didn't matter. What mattered was that Bette's big moment vanished in the shadow of someone else's tragedy. That day, she said, was the moment she stopped believing Hollywood was fair. A few years later came the second wound. In 1935, while filming Dangerous, Bette fell deeply for her co-star Franco Tone, a man whose warmth and quiet intelligence stirred something in her she hadn't felt before. They spent long nights discussing scripts, dreams, and fears of fading into the background. She thought she had finally found love. Then Joan Crawford appeared. She met Tone at a party and decided in her usual way that he would be hers. Within weeks, Joan and Franco were photographed together, and soon after, married. The same day Bette won her first Oscar, the man she loved pledged himself to her rival. "I won the award," she once said. "She won the man." Fair enough. It was then, friends said, that Bette sent a wreath of white lilies to Crawford's home with a card that read, "In memory of what died in me." From that moment, affection turned into an undeclared war. When Crawford left MGM in the early 1940s and signed with Warner Brothers, Bette's studio, the entire industry braced itself. The two women couldn't share the same studio lot, yet now they were neighbors. Joan tried to make peace, sending Bette orchids with a friendly note. Bette returned them with her own message. "I'm allergic to fakes." Their rivalry became legend, whispered about in dressing rooms and splashed across gossip columns. But behind the tabloid stories lay something more profound. 2 ambitious women were trapped in an industry that only had room for one. In 1945, Warner Brothers began production on Mildred Pierce, a film about betrayal and endurance, a role originally meant for Bette Davis. But Joan Crawford, desperate for a comeback, persuaded the director to give her the part. The result was a triumph. Mildred Pierce won her an Academy Award and revived her career. Bette, furious, told friends she didn't win that Oscar for acting. She won it for her jewelry. Whether true or not, the bitterness hardened. And when the two women finally appeared together on screen in 1962's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, and their hatred became art, the film's story, or 2 aging sisters locked in a decaying mansion, one tormenting the other, mirrored their real lives so perfectly that audiences could feel the venom pulsing beneath each line. During filming, Bette struck Joan for real in one scene. In another, Joan secretly added weights to her costume so that Bette would injure herself dragging her across the floor. The tension made the movie unforgettable. Critics hailed it as a masterpiece, though those who worked on set said they had witnessed something closer to psychological warfare than acting. The next year, Davis was nominated for an Oscar for her performance. Crawford wasn't, but she had a plan. At the ceremony, when winner Anne Bancroft couldn't attend, Joan Crawford walked on stage to accept the award on her behalf, in full view of a stunned Bette Davis. Cameras captured Crawford's radiant smile as she held the statue, and behind her Bette's expression, still cold, unblinking. Later, Davis said quietly, that was the moment she stole the stage one last time. After that night, the feud became Hollywood legend, part fact, part folklore, a cautionary tale of what happens when two powerful women are forced to fight for space in a world built to pit them against each other. As the years passed, both careers dimmed. Crawford retreated from the spotlight and Bette continued to work, though the roles grew smaller, the lights dimmer. Yet even in silence, the rivalry followed them like a ghost. In 1977, Joan Crawford died. Reporters asked Bette for a comment. She replied only, "You should never speak ill of the dead, only the truth." And the truth is, she's dead. It was classic Bette, sharp, unfiltered, and deeply human beneath the armor. A decade later, reading Christina Crawford's memoir, Mommy Dearest, Bette saw a different side of her old enemy, a woman broken by the same system that had consumed them both. She wrote an apology letter, but it was returned unopened. "Maybe neither of us knew how to forgive," she said later. In her final months, she kept a faded photograph of Joan Crawford in her bedside drawer. On the back, she had written in blue ink, "We were both devoured by Hollywood." Perhaps that was her truest confession, that their feud had never been about hatred alone, but about survival in a world that demanded women be either adored or destroyed. When Bette Davis passed away in 1989, the photo was still there. Two faces, forever linked, not by friendship nor by love, but by the cruel brilliance of the machine that made them stars. Hollywood remembers them as rivals. But maybe they were something else. Two women who played their roles too well, until the line between act and reality vanished. Bette once said, "If there's another life, I hope to meet her again. But next time, I won't act." It sounded like a farewell, but also a fragile kind of peace. The kind that only comes after a lifetime of war. Because in the end, the real story of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford isn't just about jealousy or revenge. It's about how fame can turn human hearts into battlegrounds, and how even legends can be haunted by the ghosts of their own ambition. And somewhere, in the flicker of an old film reel, those two faces still stare at each other, beautiful, bruised, and unforgettable.